please come to Chicago just to sing? In a land that's known as freedom, how can such a thing be fair? Won't you please come to Chicago for the help that we can bring? We can change the world. We are ready. The world is dying to get better.
Hello and welcome to A Conversation with Graham Nash. I'm your host, Eric Miller. This is part of the Pods and Sods network, and I want to thank you, first off, as always, for clicking the download button or the subscribe button or whatever combination of buttons you click to find this episode. It's always super appreciated. I've been kind of going back and forth with Graham's team for maybe a year now or so. I'm trying to coordinate an interview, mostly talking about music, his career, kind of doing my normal chronological style interview. But with the election, I mean, holy shit, Donald Trump got elected president. I felt an urgency and need to talk to him because he's been real vocal. He's a Bernie guy. I'm a Bernie guy. He's a progressive. I'm a progressive. So, I wanted to commiserate with him, get his thoughts, and they're passionate thoughts, as you would expect. And, so we talk a little bit about his young life and his activism, how he got involved, and growing up in World War II England, literally his family fighting fascism. And, here we are at the precipice of that in our country, his country, right? And he's an immigrant. So, we kind of cover a lot of ground, and, there's a lot of passion in this interview. If you're, sort of a right winger, there's not a lot of counterpoint here. It's just two guys going back and forth, passionately about their point of view, and, a little bit of grieving, a little bit of optimism for the future, because you can't have anything but that, really. So, having said all that, this episode is going to be slightly different, where I don't cut in a lot of songs, because there's a lot of fire and it flows here. So, it's going to be slightly different in that regard as well. Yeah, so without any further ado, my conversation about today's headlines, Donald fucking Trump, with Graham Nash. It gives me great pleasure to welcome the one and only Graham Nash. Welcome, Graham.
Thank you, Eric. How are you doing?
Doing well, man. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. Usually what I kind of do is a bit of a chronology of somebody's career, but that would take, a lifetime with you, obviously, because it's massive.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's a lot, yeah.
Nothing to be afraid of, just something to be entirely proud of. But, one thing I do want to, I kind of want to focus a little bit on your activism, right? Because it's, obviously there's a lot happening this week, and you're a progressive and I'm a progressive, so I wanted to focus a lot on that, obviously. But kind of going back to the beginning, just kind of you in life. So, you born in England in the early 40s, and you talk about your childhood a bit in your book, Wild Tales. But can you talk about, how the war and that, like, growing up in that time kind of shaped your worldview?
It did very directly in this way. Once you have made it through World War I, and then 75 years later make it through World War II, nothing can shake you. Don't tell me that your coffee is not the right temperature. I don't want to know.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It really puts a reality on your life.
Right. And was that kind of firsthand? So,
of course,
you had family that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had family that were bombed. My house didn't get bombed. I don't know why, but it didn't. My cousin Ray, his house, he was blown under the fireplace by a bomb that fell on his house.
Oh boy.
So when you're in a situation where you don't know whether you're house is going to be there tomorrow, or whether your friends are going to be alive, which happened in my life, you have a different, attitude towards the world. Don't bring me silly problems. Let's talk about real stuff.
Right. Do you, that's quite graphic what you describe right there. Like, do you remember, because you're really young at that point, less than 10, right? I would
Yes.
gather 5-ish, 3 even.
I was 3 years old when the war finished, but I have definite memories of it. I remember my mother pulling the blackout curtains.
Right.
The blackout curtains was to make sure that the enemy pilots above, flying over, bombing you, couldn't see your house because there was no lights in it.
Right.
It wasn't like a village of blazing lights, so you knew where to bomb.
Right.
Everybody had blackout curtains, which completely stopped any light from going through the window. So I remember that when I was a kid, several times. I remember the air raid sirens. Yeah, it's crazy.
So at a certain point growing up, so you're 3 and you probably have, like you say, you have memories about some of the details, but like the context of fascism and fighting that and global politics, that has to come a little bit later. Like, do you remember?
Absolutely.
Do you remember putting that together as a kid? Like the whys?
I do. I was watching in the early '60s, sometime around '64, watching Sir Bertrand Russell, who was a anti-nuke peerage man. He was a lord, and he would march from Aldermaston to London to protest nuclear power. Mm. And the Hollies wrote a song. Me and Alan and Tony wrote a song called "Too Many People," which was basically about the population explosion and the fact that, in our opinion, there's too many rats, and I don't think the Earth is going to be able to supply us all
right.
in the future.
Right.
And, what's going on today with I just heard today that Trump has announced his man on the science committee, who doesn't even believe in global warming.
Right.
Thinks it's a complete farce.
Right.
That alone is fucking deadly.
Yeah, no kidding, man. I really, really want to get into that. But, before that, like so as an artist, there's a point, you mentioned that Holly song, so that's even young. Is there a point where you realize, hey, I have a voice and art can change minds?
Yeah, but it was on a much more shallow level. It was,
right.
Oh, look, they're shaking their ass. Fantastic. We must be grooving here.
Right.
That's what it was. You did 4 sets a night of an hour, and you just play all these songs that you knew. It was like we'd escaped from doing what our father and our grandfathers did.
Right.
You were supposed to go down the mine. You were supposed to go into the mill. That's what you were supposed to do.
Right.
And that's what generations of North of England people did. But my mother and father didn't allow me to fall for what is actually called that gold watch theory, where you work for a company for years, and when you get to be, 65 years old, they pat you on the head, give you a gold watch, get rid of you, and get, somebody younger, cheaper, and stronger in your place.
Right.
But I never was allowed to fall for that. And they encouraged my passion in music, for which I'll be forever grateful. Because here I am talking to you.
Right, no kidding. And from the activism side of things, did you, aside from getting the asses to shake, did you see that early, or was that more like once you got to California?
It started to happen in the end days of my time with the Hollies. The very last show I ever did with the Hollies was a benefit to Save the Children,
right.
At the London Palladium. Yeah, but it was basically when I came to America and heard all the beautiful Crosby songs and the Stevens songs and the Neil songs and Joni songs, and I realized that if I could take the sensibility that I had learned with the Hollies in terms of creating a melody that you can't forget after you've heard it a couple of times, mm-hmm. if I could put decent words to that, and not this Moon, June, screw me in the back of the car kind of lyrics, that I could actually touch people's hearts.
Right. Yeah, and that's an understatement. In the in the 60s, these guys, you were really sort of at the tip of the spear, in terms of cultural enlightenment, progressivism, that expansion. Did you feel that? Was that a wave you were riding?
Yes. We knew what we had done.
Right.
We knew that first Crosby, Stills and Nash album was going to be a smash.
Right.
We knew. You got to understand, at that time, there was a lot of early heavy metal out, there was, giant amps with Jimmy and giant amps with Led Zeppelin and, and here we come with this kind of acoustic-y feeling California sound, whatever the fuck that is, album, and we knew.
Right.
The moment we finished mixing it, Ahmet Erdogan, our friend and mentor from Atlantic Records, was there at the session and our final session, and we gave him the tape, and we knew it was going to be a smash. We absolutely knew it.
How about in terms of messaging? Like, did you know? Like, did you have a feeling?
Listen to some of the messages that we were talking about.
Right.
Incredible stuff. And look at the history of David, long time gone, written about, Robert Kennedy's assassination. For what it's worth, written about the riots in Los Angeles, military madness, immigration, man, Chicago. Yeah, man, we were full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah. Let me ask you this kind of, as far as that goes, you mentioned Chicago as obviously an epic, and it's a message of state violence against its own people, right? And we're still seeing that. You still see modern day police shootings. Like, how is that?
Hey, I just did the Tavish Smiley show here in Los Angeles.
Awesome.
And we were talking about that on the show, talking about the madness that has just happened, and how this really isn't a democracy.
Right.
I became an American citizen over 30 years ago because I thought it was one of the greatest democracies on the earth. And now I realize that it's not at all. It isn't the people's votes that make the president, it's the Electoral College.
Right.
That was a system put into place by our founding fathers who did not trust the people to choose their president. So they put this little thing called the Electoral College into play. And all it did was keep the power in the hands of white, rich, landowning, sometimes slave-owning white men.
Right.
That's what the Electoral College is.
Yep.
So don't tell me this country is a democracy.
The superdelegates are kind of worse in a way because they can vote.
It's a fuck system, period.
Right. They can vote autonomously, whereas the Electoral College theoretically are supposed to go with the will of the people in their state, right?
That's right.
Right. Versus.
I mean, what balls it would have if they actually declared Hillary the winner, because she got almost 500,000 more votes than Trump did. And this is the second time in 16 years that this has happened.
Yep.
Don't forget, Al Gore had 500,000 more votes than George Bush.
Right.
And the Supreme Court, who should never have had anything to say about the election, gave us George Bush.
Yep.
What happened? Millions of people dead.
Yeah. You know when that Electoral College changes is when the Republicans lose via that.
Exactly.
Right.
And isn't that sad? That's so sad.
Yeah.
You can tell that I'm grieving right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you, sir. You were, I'm right there with you. And you were vocal before the election, calling Donald Trump terrifying.
Yes.
Do you, I mean, there's a million ways we can go with this conversation.
Well, let me tell you this.
Yeah.
I was talking with Tavish Smiley today on television. And in the middle of the conversation about Trump, I said, you know something? I'm kind of scared that we're talking about this. He said, what do you mean? I said, obviously, it's well known that he has an enemies list, and he's just going to go down it one by one.
Right.
And I'm talking to you, I'm criticizing him, I'm scared of doing this. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, fucked up. Yeah, I mean, with your backdrop of your family fighting fascism literally, and to a degree, you fleeing it, if you will, that's probably a stretch, but,
It was a stretch, yes, but that's all right.
What do you suppose, I mean, obviously you saw this coming. Like, what do you suppose? How would you
We do?
explain? Yeah. Well, I mean, how did it
Well,
happen?
it's very obvious how, to explain it. First of all, with voter suppression, with Kenneth Blackmore doing all the voter suppression stuff, with that guy, what's his name, Kovac from Kansas City, getting, purging thousands and thousands of people off the voting register,
Right.
between that and between all his lies and between the fact that this is what the fucking fact is. In this country, there are many, many brilliant people. There are also many, many stupid people, and that's a fucking fact.
Right. Yeah, George Carlin said it. He said, "Imagine how dumb the average person is, and then realize half of them are dumber than that."
Yes. Yeah.
But,
George Carlin, what a genius.
No kidding. But it's funny. It's not. I'm hesitant to call all Trump voters racist or sexist or xenophobes, right?
No, you can't do that.
Right.
There are some very decent people that believe him.
Absolutely, and that kind of leads me to a question that I had. I was talking to a friend, and she, and it kind of follows your career to a degree. She was talking about, in the 60s, we kind of went through a cultural expansion, right, in terms of everything, right? And
Yeah.
and it's grown, right? It's, think of it as a circle growing outwards, right? And at a certain point, nature would just contract to that, or it would it would compartmentalize back inwards, right?
Yes.
Sort of as a reaction to, all those things, technology, race relations,
Everything.
right?
Yeah.
LGBTQ acceptance. So do you think this is a reaction, to we progressed too far?
No, I think there was a very thin veil between positive people and people that are not so positive. There's a very thin veil, and it was always there. We always knew there was racism in this country.
Right.
No one ever said it had disappeared. And the fact that it's still going on means it's not history. It's still going on.
Right.
So what you do, I believe, is what I'm going to do. I'm going to grieve. I'm going to get over it. And I'm going to stay and fight. I had a lot of friends saying that we were considering leaving America because of Trump. I won't do that. I am not a coward. I will fight to the very last breath that I have against his misogyny, against his hatred of Muslims, his hatred of Mexican people. I mean, and what the hell he's going to do with the Supreme Court and stack that for the next 50 years is insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you said a thin veil, can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, there is a thin veil between people that, that are racist and people that are not.
Right.
Very thin veil. Same veil between people who are violent and people who are not. People who are peaceful and people who are not. There's a thin veil. Donald Trump ripped away that veil.
Right.
And exposed America for what it is. A racist, undemocratic country.
Yeah. Boy. To reference another comedian, a hero of mine named Bill Hicks, he basically, this is where I got it. It's probably a timeless message, but he says everything is a choice between fear and love, right?
Right.
So when you say that thin veil, whatever you come across in your life, you have the option: am I going to choose the path of love? Am I going to choose the path of fear?
And that's what we can do about it.
Right.
And you can smile at people, and you can help a lady open a car door, and you can pat a kid on the head. You can turn this toxicity into positive. I really believe it, and that's what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
I will grieve, I will get over it, and I will try and figure out how the hell I can help put this right.
Yeah. I also want to ask you, because, in the run-up to, Hillary getting the nomination, you were active in Occupy Wall Street. You were a Bernie guy, as am I, diehard. Can you talk about?
I think that Bernie Sanders is going to be a thorn in his side.
Yeah, no doubt. But I mean,
I think that voice of Bernie's is going to be loud.
He's enlightened a lot of folks. A lot of young people.
And he helped push Hillary left. I mean, she wasn't for the $15 minimum wage. She wasn't for that until he pushed her, and he pushed the left, and I'm glad about that. So now that Hillary is not the president, even though obviously she got the most votes, I think Bernie will be someone to hope in and to believe in.
Yeah, his true north, like he does not sway.
Yes.
Then it's...
And he's been there from you remember that photograph of him with the race riots in the 60s?
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And
a good man.
That was going to be my question, was like, that is fucking frustrating, right? Because we had that guy, that guy could be our president right now, and we would be having...
I know, but you know what came in the way? The DNC.
Yeah.
The Democratic National Committee did not want him. They wanted Hillary, and look what happened.
Right.
I believe that if we'd have run, Oprah, if we're getting into reality TV,
right.
vote for Oprah against Trump, and I'll bet you, I know who would win.
Right.
So, like I said, the only thing to do is try and turn all this toxicity and anger that I'm feeling and try and push it into my art, into my songwriting, into my paintings, something positive.
Right. Yeah, I mean, not to usurp one of your song titles, but he's King Midas in reverse, right? Like everything's
going to turn to shit.
Right. Sorry to associate that with one of your works.
That's okay.
Another long-standing cause for you. We could delineate these all day, but this is one you've really were, ahead of the times, is ecology, right? And climate change.
Yes.
You mentioned it, back to the 70s. I mean, what can you say about that? I mean, that's...
Well, I think people are going to wake up when the people that are controlling us now lose Miami, lose a lot of New York, Bangladesh, gone. That's what's going to happen. And then we're going to sit around and say, oh, we made a mistake. 4 years of this shit. This planet's history. And you know what the truth is? The planet doesn't give a fuck about us. If every one of us disappeared instantly, it would still keep on spinning. And eventually another life form would form.
Right.
The planet doesn't, we keep saying, we got to save the planet. It's bullshit. What they mean is, let's save ourselves.
Right. Yeah, and how could someone be opposed to that, right? I mean,
because he's a stupid man.
Right.
I'm telling you, this man is completely stupid.
Yeah.
He's getting all his news from the fucking internet, and I just saw a piece, on John Oliver that showed him doing exactly that.
Right.
He told incredible lies, and then somebody busted him on it. He said, "How could you say that?" He said, "Well, I read it on the internet."
Right.
This is our fucking president.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, that's and that's an interesting thing. Talk about a perfect storm of what brings this to reality is you have these bubbles of of bias, right? So there is, you and I probably share facts because we are thinkers, right? And can do some research and all that stuff. And then you have people that just believe everything they see on a meme, right?
44% of Americans get their news from Facebook.
Right.
44%.
So how do we change that? Is it even possible?
Well, Zuckerberg says, that's a silly idea. And then when he really thought about it, he says, yeah, you may be right. We've got to stop all this. But it's very hard to try and find out what the truth is. And in fact, he's right. It's very difficult to know what the actual truth is. But the actual truths that I do understand are that Trump wants to, find and deport 2 to 3 million people. This is what he said yesterday.
Right.
How the fuck do you find 3 million people?
Well, the simple answer in his case is just by the color of their skin or the last name.
Oh, yeah. So we're not fascist now?
Right.
Of course we are. This is a dictatorship, Eric.
Yeah.
This is not democracy.
Yeah. And not that it has to ring true to you personally for you to take a stand on it because right is right and just is just, right? But
That's
you're
right.
you're an immigrant, right? So when you hear that,
I am, and you know what? So the fuck is Donald Trump's family.
right?
Don't you got to understand, this has been going on a long time. Donald Trump's father was the fucking guy that Woody Guthrie hated because he tried to find an apartment for a black friend of his and was refused.
Oh, literally, that he
He wrote a song. Woody wrote a song about it. It's about Trump's father.
I didn't know that. I knew his father was, associated with the Klan or whatever, but I didn't know there was a connection there with Woody Guthrie.
I mean, and the KKK doing a victory, march.
So,
Holy shit.
So how do you? I mean, you're like you say, you're grieving, but I hear more anger at this point in time, and I share it. But how do you stay vigilant or keep optimistic? Is that possible in the face of this?
Yes, it is. I'm optimistic because I have children.
Right.
I'm optimistic because I have grandchildren. I have to see it through their eyes. Me, I'm 75. I'm gone soon. I want to be around for as long as I can, but I mean, the fucking facts are that I'm an older man.
Right.
But what do we do with our children? How can we leave our children with this man?
Right.
That is going to take this country back 50 years. What about all the work about civil rights? What about the work about women's rights? What about all the work that's been done on the environment to try and, make the planet a better place? What about all that work? It's probably gone.
Yeah. It's like one step forward, two goose steps back.
Yeah.
Right?
Goose step is a good phrase.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that because that message you just said right there is literally boils down to teach your children well, right? And you're the guy. So
we gotta.
So 40, 50 years in, like, is there any bit of you that's like, I just want to bang my head against the wall because you're not getting it, people?
I can only tell people how I feel and what's happening to me.
Right.
Nobody has to agree. Nobody has to listen. I was marching in New York City 2 or 3 times this week, and I have to tell you that the people who were in that march were incredible. There were blacks and whites and Asians and Puerto Ricans and lesbians, and there was everybody there, thousands of them marching. This is not right.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to fix it, but it's not right.
So that's inspiring to see that diversity lock arms and standing up,
Absolutely.
Yeah. You hope they can weather this storm, right?
We will. Don't forget, we weathered Nixon.
Right.
We weathered Ronald Reagan twice. Holy shit, we made it through George Bush twice.
This is different, though. I mean, he's different.
This is very different.
Yeah.
This is very, very different. He has surrounded himself with insane people who are against progress and against the planet and against women and against Latins and against Muslims. This is very different, man.
Yeah. What would you, looking forward, what would you hope, say, the Democrats will do by 2020? Like, there's the next chance, 2018 midterms, so 2020, what would you hope? What do they need to fix? How do they right this ship?
That's a difficult question to answer because I'm not really privy to what goes on in the Democratic National Committee.
Right.
But I think people should be replaced. I think people should actually figure out that they made the wrong choice when they didn't go for Bernie and killed his candidacy. I think that a lot of them will disappear, and I wish to God that more sensible people will, take over the Democratic Party because they blew it here big time.
Yeah, it's even possible that because he's a serial bungler, right? And he's incompetent, and he's
the truth is, in the first week, he might say something impeachable.
Right.
Or do something that is so outrageous that the whole country is against him. This man is not stable.
It's so ridiculous. Yes. So by the time 3-4 years comes in, it's likely to be a fiery wreck. So the Republicans may even primary him, right? and get somebody else.
You know, the truth is, in today's climate, he very well may be re-elected.
Right. Well,
but, you know, here's the fact. 10% of black women voted for Trump. 53% of white women voted for Trump. What does that tell you?
And why is that? Is it just
people are angry?
Yeah.
And I completely understand their anger.
Right.
But they made a desperately stupid decision here. They're putting a guy in charge of this entire fucking country, in charge of the FBI, in charge of the CIA, in charge of the National Security Agency, in charge of all the taxes. And you know what? I hope that somebody like WikiLeaks can bust his taxes open and show them to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he would not show his taxes. And the reasons are two. One, he's not the businessman that he has claimed all this time because he's actually been bankrupt 6 times.
Right.
And two, the Russian influence.
Right. You know, I got to say, I don't think people care because he didn't release his tax returns and it did not affect it. You know what I mean? I think it's...
I know, but that just tells you, you know, how many stupid people are believing his shit.
Yeah.
You know that's the reason he won't show him.
Of course.
And he can't because it shows that he gave $300 million, billion, trillion to Planned Parenthood.
Right.
You know that he's got business dealings with nefarious people in this world.
I think it's more likely that he's a fraudulent, you know, he claims to be a billionaire and he's not. I think that's probably it, because that's ego, right? That's narcissism.
But it's worse than that. You've got to understand the Russian government swayed this election.
Yeah.
The Russian government gave WikiLeaks all those emails. And they also did it, 2 weeks before the end. And I think James Comey cost Hillary the election. I totally believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, I there's a lot more to it than that. I think she was... If it had been Bernie, he would have won. You know, I think Hillary was flawed, either
of course,
truthfully or not truthfully.
But you know
right?
what?
Yeah.
Here's how I feel about it. I don't give a fuck what she did.
Right. Yeah.
Look what the choice is.
You're right. Absolutely right. Yeah. Do you think there's ever a point where a third party might make a difference in a positive way?
Both parties will never accept a third party.
Yeah.
They've got the game wired. They've got, that's one thing about Trump that was right. It's rigged.
Yeah.
It's all bullshit. 100 million people didn't vote. 100 million people. You know how many people have fucking died for the right to vote in other countries? And 100 million people couldn't get off their fucking ass to vote.
Yeah. And have died for that right.
Oh, yes. Many times.
Yeah.
You get a purple finger in Iran, and you next thing you know, you've got a bullet in your head.
Yeah, yeah. I want to. I want to ask you about inspiration.
You know what? Can you do me a favor?
Please, yeah.
Can we stop right here and pick it up in 10 minutes? I'm very hungry, and I've been looking at this sandwich here, and it's driving me crazy.
Actually,
Can I call you back in 10 minutes?
Actually, I'll pretty much wrap up if you want to do another.
Okay. All right. Let's do that.
Okay. So I want to ask you, your last album was, you said there was a period there where you didn't have anything to say, right? And you came back to songwriting. So with all this mountain of bullshit, is this going to be a creative period for you? Because you got a lot to say now.
The truth is that I've been looking at my guitar, and I don't have the energy to even pick it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'm grieving right now. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to create. I don't want to do anything. I need to grieve. I need to take stock of my life, and I need to keep positive and keep moving forward. And if that includes writing about this madness, that's what it'll include.
Yeah. Well, once you get there, there's millions of people that are looking forward to that. So hopefully that'll be sooner than later, sir.
Thank you for that, Eric.
And just on a positive note, Weed is legal in California, so there's that.
Yeah, but and you know, I mean, you want to talk about the history of that? You want to talk about William Randolph Hearst and having all these, you know, a lot of money in cotton and hating this hemp stuff?
Right, of course.
And so tying it to A, hippies, and B, blacks.
Mm-hmm.
And did a propaganda campaign with that silly movie. What was it? Reefer Madness.
Right.
Have you ever seen it recently?
No.
It's pathetic. It's fucking pathetic what they tried to convince people that marijuana did to them.
Well, that's why they called it marijuana, because it gives it a stigma that it's foreign, right? It's from Mexico.
Yeah.
You know, we don't do
of course.
that. Right?
And God knows Trump hates those Mexicans.
Right, of course.
But look what he's doing now. He's backtracking on everything. On 60 Minutes last night, he says, "Well, the wall may need some fences." Oh yeah, I'll get Mexico to pay for it, and that's bullshit.
Well, it's a bit of trying to lull the other side into acceptance.
Yes, Barnum and Bailey did it great. This way to the egress.
Right. Well, keep being a voice, man. You're a leader, and it's critical.
I don't want to be a leader. I just want to be a human being that's trying his best.
Well, I mean, we all are on this side for voice of progress, right? Like speaking up against something that's unjust.
I don't mind you saying that, right?
Yeah. And just one final question before I let you go is, an off topic. Just any updates on your friend Joni? Do you visit her, talk with her?
I saw Joni a week ago. She's awake and alert and speaking and thinking. I asked her if any creation had come to her, like her writing or songwriting or painting and stuff, and she hasn't been doing anything. But she has an incredible team of people working, and it will be maybe a slower process than we wanted, but I think that eventually she will come back to being Joni Mitchell, and
awesome.
Thank God.
Yeah, no kidding. Did you do you talk the election with her? Do you say, "Can you fucking believe this"?
No.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to let Joan know that I was there for her and I love her.
Wonderful. As do we all.
Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, very much appreciated. I would like to do kind of a proper career, talk about music at some point with you. If we could do that, I would enjoy that thoroughly. But people can find you, GrahamNash.com, obviously, is your site, and hopefully, you'll pick up that guitar sooner than later.
Thank you, Eric.
You who are on the road must have a code that you can live by, and so become yourself, because the past is just a goodbye. Teach your children well, 'cause their father's hell did slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they fix, the one you'll know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry, so just look at them and sigh, and know they love you. And you hear of tender years, do you care? Can't know the fears you see that your elders grew by, and so please help them with your youth. They seek the truth before they can die. And teach your parents well, 'cause their children's hell will slowly go by, and feed them on your dreams, the one they fix, the one you'll know by. Don't you ever ask them why, if they told you you would cry, so just look at them and sigh. And oh, they love you.
Thanks again for listening to this conversation with Graham Nash. Obviously, a lot of passion, and we share a point of view. So hopefully we've enlightened some folks or confirmed some folks or whatever. I was pretty thrilled to hear that he was also talking with Tavis Smiley. Good company if that's the case. That's pretty, also a hero of mine. Pretty cool. So like I said in the episode, you can find more of him at grahamnash.com, as if that was even necessary to mention. But certainly check out his new record. It's pretty cool, and hopefully he will get to some new music sooner than later. You can find more Pods and Sods on our website, which is podsodcast.com. You can also find us on iTunes, on Stitcher. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/podssods. If you Google the Pods and Sods Network, you should find a whole bunch of goodies. Wherever you do find us, please click some positive, thumbs up, a bunch of stars, 5 stars, leave a positive comment, a review. All that is much appreciated. And thanks again for listening. I will close with some words of wisdom that I actually referenced in this episode from Mr. Bill Hicks. Thank you.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride. And we kill those people. Shut him up. We have a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. This has to be real. It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok? But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace.